My son was certain I wouldn't be showing up for Christmas. "Don't come, Mom," his text said. "We've already made other plans." So I went ahead and took his name off the house. He had no idea it wasn't his anymore. Then came another one. "Mama, you always bring the mood down. You walk in and it's like the whole house forgets how to breathe. Just stay home this year. We've got other plans." The third one stung the most. "You're like a rain cloud that parks itself over everything. This place needs fresh energy, not funeral vibes. Maybe you should look into a retirement home that matches your frequency." That was the lovely holiday greeting I got from my only child. 3 back-to-back texts, sent 4 days before Christmas. While I was in the little back room they call mine, knitting a scarf. It's not really a bedroom at all, just a converted storage closet with a cot, a cracked mirror, and a space heater that shuts off every time somebody runs the microwave. If you're here for stories like this, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to know your city or country. My name's Linda Mae Carson. I exist, in a suburb about an hour outside Dallas, Texas. I'm 71 years old. I have one son, Adam. Adam came into my life when I was just 22. His father, Robert, passed away when I was 63 from lung cancer. Robert was a good man. Quiet, dependable, the kind who kept his word, especially to his kids. After he died, Adam was already grown, but I still remember sitting across from him in the hospital waiting room after the funeral. He was scrolling on his phone, barely looking up. That was the first time I felt invisible to him. It wasn't the last. After Robert passed, I went back to work. Part-time teaching at the local elementary school and shelving books at the community library, just to make ends meet. I lived simply. Clipping coupons. Sewing my own clothes. Baking from scratch. Always making sure the house stayed warm and the fridge was stocked. Then one night at 2:13 in the morning, Adam called me in tears. His marriage had fallen apart, he had nowhere to live, and he couldn't afford a decent place on his own. I didn't think twice. I cashed out my retirement savings, $80,000, and told him to find somewhere we could share. We ended up with a modest 3-bedroom house. Technically I bought it. My money, my name on the deed. But I added his name so we could qualify for the loan. That was my mistake. I wanted him to feel like it was ours, like he was rebuilding his life with me. That first Christmas in the new house, he made me a promise. We were sitting on the floor, surrounded by unpacked boxes, with a little pre-lit tree leaning against the wall. I was holding a box of old ornaments we'd hung together when he was a boy. His eyes, red from too much bourbon, met mine and he said, "If I ever get my life together, you'll always have a room in my house, Mama. You'll be the first person I take care of." I tucked that promise deep in my heart. But promises, I've learned, can shatter easier than glass. 2 years later, Adam met Vanessa. She was younger, sharp-tongued, always with her phone out, recording some recipe or dance or life hack for her followers. She called herself a wellness coach and sold powders that cost more than my monthly electric bill. From the moment she moved in, things shifted. She told me to move into the back room, just temporarily, while they redid the upstairs. That was 3 Christmases ago. She'd make comments like, "Your mom has such heavy energy. She's got that hospice vibe, like she's always waiting for something bad to happen." One day I overheard her joke, "Babe, I think your mom is aging the furniture just by sitting on it." When they had guests, they'd shut my door. I'd hear the clinking of glasses, laughter, stories I wasn't part of. Once she taped a note to my door, "Please stay in during dinner. We're cultivating a lighter mood tonight. Thanks, love." I still have that note, folded inside my Bible. I wasn't wanted at their table. I wasn't wanted in their photos. I became the shadow in their perfectly staged life. Except when they needed me. When Vanessa had her little surgeries. When the baby came and they needed someone up at 3 in the morning. Then I was useful. The rest of the time I was background noise. But I stayed. Because mothers stay. Because grandmothers forgive. Because I told myself sacrifice looks like this. Quiet, steady, and unseen. Then came that text. "Don't come. We already have other plans." I sat there for a long time after reading it, the scarf slipping from my lap, the yarn slowly unraveling like something inside me had finally given up. It wasn't just that they didn't want me there. It was that I was disposable. An inconvenience. A smudge on their perfect holiday picture. I reached under my bed and pulled out an old photo album. Adam's first steps, first day of school, his wedding, even his divorce papers I'd printed when I helped him file. And in the back, inside an envelope labeled Promises, was a note from Robert. In his handwriting it read, "This house was built with your hands, your back and your savings. If anyone ever makes you feel like a guest in your own home," Robert once wrote, "remind them who gave them the key." I stared at those words for a long while. And then for the first time in years I moved with purpose. I stood up, went to the closet, pulled out the small safe box, and dialed a number I hadn't called since Robert's funeral. "William," I said when he answered, "I need your help. It's time." 2 days before Christmas Eve, the house looked like it belonged in a glossy magazine. Warm lights wound around the porch pillars, candles flickered in every window, and the smell of baked brie with cranberry glaze drifted through the walls I had once helped paint. I wasn't invited. They called it a rehearsal dinner, but it had the feel of a pre-Christmas gala. Cars lined the driveway. Inside were neighbors, Adam's coworkers, Vanessa's yoga clients, even some man she introduced as her branding advisor. I didn't know a single face. From my little room off the kitchen, once a pantry now my prison, I could hear laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft clatter of plates I'd scrubbed spotless earlier that day. Wrapping myself in my old wool cardigan, I stepped onto the back porch. The night air bit at my skin, but I hardly noticed. In my hands I clutched our wedding photo, Robert young and smiling, looking at me like I was the only thing in the world worth seeing. Through the fogged windows I found a clear patch and peered inside. Adam sat at the head of the table, laughing. Vanessa glowed beside him, a sparkling drink in one hand, her other hand resting on their toddler's shoulder. And then I heard it, not shouted, just whispered to the guests nearest her, but it slid through the cracked window like a blade. "She just sits there like a tombstone," Vanessa said, rolling her eyes toward the hallway I'd walked down earlier that afternoon. That look in her eyes, like someone died and never left. A few guests chuckled awkwardly. One murmured, "That's cold." But Vanessa kept going. "I told Adam if she shows up on Christmas Eve I'm going back to my mother's. I can't drink eggnog next to the Grim Reaper." This time someone laughed loud. "God, you're awful." She smirked. "I'm honest. He smells like mothballs and sadness. It's like inviting grief to dinner." I stepped back from the window, my knees unsteady. My breath rose in white clouds as I looked down at Robert's face in the frame. Then the door behind me opened. Vanessa stepped outside, heels far too high for the ice, a thick envelope in one hand and a glass of sparkling wine in the other. She sipped delicately, then held the envelope out like she was offering me a wedding invitation. "This is for you," she said. "We were going to slip it under your door, but I thought, why not hand deliver?" I took it without a word. Her head tilted slightly, her smile soft and polished, the one she used for her online followers. "You deserve your own kind of celebration, something better suited to your vibe." Then she turned and went back inside. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a voucher, a printed certificate with gold trim and cartoon holly in the corners. 3 complimentary days at Whispering Pines Adult Community, it read. Below, in Vanessa's neat, overstyled cursive, "You'll find more compatible energy here, Mom. Trust me, no love, Adam." No signature, just that little flourish she'd perfected from years of bullet journaling and influencer branding. I went inside the side door, the one leading through the laundry room, not the front. I didn't want to be seen. Passing the humming dryer and the pile of half-wrapped gifts I wasn't asked to help with, I stepped into my little back room. I lit a single candle on the table beside my bed. Then I placed the voucher next to Robert's photo, propping it up like another guest at a funeral. "I got my invitation," I whispered. "Just not to their party." I sat there listening to the hum of life just beyond my walls. Music, laughter, glasses clinking. It sounded like the kind of Christmas I used to create for Adam when he was small. A real tree, not plastic. Gingerbread cookies made by hand. Stockings filled with little things that proved I'd been paying attention. I thought about all those Christmas mornings, waking before dawn to bake cinnamon rolls so he'd wake up to the smell. I thought about the year we couldn't afford gifts, so I turned the living room into a snowflake wonderland cut from paper. He'd called it the most magical day of his life. I thought about his promise. "If I ever get my life together, Mama, you'll be the first one I take care of." But I wasn't first. I wasn't even last. I was forgotten, an afterthought, a burden they could outsource. I looked again at the words. Whispering Pines. I knew the place. Bingo nights, movie screenings, bland meals without salt. Perfect for someone else. Someone whose life was over. But I wasn't done. I stood. My legs ached, but I was still standing. My back cracked as I straightened up. I slipped off my cardigan, folded it neatly and set it aside. Then I reached into the bottom drawer of my nightstand and pulled out an old address book I hadn't touched in years. Flipping past names of people long gone. Some passed away, some moved far, others just drifted out of my life. I found it. William G. Larkin, Estate Law, Dallas, 21455553982. Robert had trusted William with our will, our house, and the small life we had built together. They'd been friends for 40 years. He was at Robert's funeral, holding my hand when I could barely stand. I picked up the phone and dialed. It rang twice before a calm voice answered. Larkin Law Office. "This is Linda Carson," I said. "Robert's wife. I think it's time we talked." We met the next morning at a little diner off the town square. The kind of place where the coffee is strong, the eggs are greasy, and the waitresses call you sugar without thinking twice. It had been a decade since I'd last seen him. He looked older, of course. More gray in his hair, slower in his movements. But his eyes were still the same steady blue, still kind. He didn't waste time with small talk, and I appreciated that. "I've reviewed Robert's original deed," he said, opening a worn manila folder. "Linda, you were the sole buyer. The funds came entirely from your account. Retirement savings, right?" I nodded. $80,000. Every penny I had. And Adam's name was added later, strictly for the mortgage application, not for ownership? "That's right." William leaned back. "Then here's the good news. You never gave up primary ownership. Adam has no legal claim to the house. Not now, not ever." I didn't smile. I just let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. It wasn't joy, it was relief. Like setting down a heavy bag you've carried for miles. "You're fully within your rights to remove his name from all documents," he went on. "If you want to protect the property, we can put it in a revocable trust. You keep full control and no one, not even Adam, can challenge your wishes." "Can we name it after Robert?" I asked softly. William smiled. "Of course." And so we did. I signed the papers that afternoon in his office, the same one where Robert and I once sat, drafting our will back when Adam was still in high school. I could almost see Robert's blocky handwriting on that old clause. "The home shall pass into Linda's hands without dispute upon my death." It already had. Now it was just about locking the doors behind me. William filed everything with the county and promised to have it finalized in 48 hours. In Texas, it turns out when you own the land, the walls, and the mortgage, you own the story too. That night, I came home through the side entrance. No one noticed. Vanessa was in the living room filming a holiday tablescape tutorial, while Adam fiddled with the smart thermostat. I walked straight to the breaker box and rewrote the master access code. I'd kept the manual hidden in a shoebox under my bed, along with spare keys and Robert's dog tags. Then I reset every digital lock, switched the Wi-Fi to a new account in my name, and called the utility companies to change all services effective at midnight. They wouldn't notice immediately. That was the point. The next morning, a locksmith named Dwight showed up around 10. I handed him the title documents and he simply nodded. "Ma'am, you're the legal owner. That's all I need." He changed every lock, front door, back, garage, even the side gate, and handed me 2 sets of keys. "Want me to leave a spare under a flower pot or something?" he asked. "No," I said, folding the keys into my coat pocket. "I won't be losing these." When he left, I walked slowly through the house, room by room. I hadn't done that in years, not since they'd moved in and started repainting, tearing down the wallpaper Robert and I had chosen back in '97. I ran my fingers along the walls, feeling the old plaster. It remembered me even if they didn't. In the kitchen, I spotted a jar labeled Holiday Savings with a sticky note in Vanessa's handwriting. "Ski trip. March." Inside was $462. I didn't take it. I'm not a thief. But I did leave a note. "This house is no longer your vacation rental. Love, Mom." That afternoon, I sat at the dining room table and wrote a letter. Just a few lines, but I rewrote them 3 times until the tone felt right. Not angry. Not cruel. Just final. "Adam, this home was built with love, sacrifice, and silence. I gave you everything I had because I believed you understood what it means to belong somewhere. You chose to make me a guest in my own life. Consider this your notice. The lease on my kindness has expired. You have 14 days to make arrangements. After that you'll need a key and you won't have one. I didn't sign it with love. Love was never the problem. Later that evening I placed it on Adam's pillow. I knew he wouldn't find it right away. Adam and Vanessa had taken the baby across town for a holiday photo shoot, complete with rented snow and fake reindeer. Vanessa had shown me the little elf outfit, complete with a jingling hat, but she never asked if I wanted a picture. That night before bed I lit a candle for Robert. "We've taken the house back, darling," I whispered, and I slept better than I had in years. Christmas Eve arrived like a stage performance, not a holiday. Vanessa had spent the week preparing for their big Facebook live stream. She called it Home Vibes and Holiday Spirit. There were glowing centerpieces, matching sweaters, carefully timed entrances, and even a rented snow machine out front. From the sidewalk, the house looked like a postcard. Twinkling lights wrapped around every railing, holiday jazz floating from hidden speakers, and a glossy printed banner announcing a new family tradition. But their tradition no longer had room for the woman who started it all. I hadn't just been forgotten, I'd been erased. Only I hadn't gone quietly. I parked 2 houses down, stepped out in my best wool coat and walked toward the gate. My boots crunched over frost-covered grass. In one hand I carried a small bag. Inside was a portable projector, a thumb drive and a single folded sheet of paper. At the gate I paused. The code panel blinked softly. They hadn't changed it. Good. I entered the emergency override Dwight had programmed for me 3 days earlier. The lights flickered once and then the whole house went dark. From inside came gasps, muttered curses and Vanessa's sharp voice rising in panic. "Who turned off the power?" "Adam." "Fix it, we're live." The live stream cut instantly. The phone on a tripod in the dining room froze mid-frame. I waited a few beats, then opened the front door and stepped inside. Guests stood frozen, blinking in confusion. Somewhere near the kitchen the baby began to cry. Adam turned from the fireplace, mouth open, ready to bark at someone, until he saw me. "Mama," he said. I didn't answer. I walked to the console table, set down the projector and plugged it into the outlet I'd wired to a backup battery earlier that week. The pale light filled the room and our wedding photo appeared on the wall. Robert in his gray suit, me in my lace-trimmed dress, both of us laughing like we didn't need anything but each other. The next image appeared, me in the hospital holding newborn Adam. Then Adam at 4 on my lap, clapping at a puppet show. Then Adam at 10 riding the bike I'd saved for all year. Finally, a grainy video from his high school graduation. Adam at 18 in a wrinkled cap and gown stepping to the podium. "If there's one person who got me here," he said, voice cracking, "it's my mom. She worked double shifts to buy my books. She gave up everything, even her own comfort, so I could feel safe. When I have a house, I promise she's the first person who will live in it." The clip ended. Silence. I stepped to the center of the room. The guests moved back, whispering. Someone murmured, "Is that his mom?" A man muttered, "Oh hell." Adam's voice was tight, defensive. What is this?" I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the notarized document. I laid it on the dining table, right next to the cranberry glaze beginning to pool. "I am the sole owner of this house," I said. "Your names are no longer on the deed. The access codes were changed this morning. The locks replaced." Vanessa's mouth fell open. "You're joking." I looked from her to Adam. "You have 14 days to vacate. You'll get a formal notice in the mail. After that I'll involve the sheriff." Adam stepped toward me. "You're doing this on Christmas Eve?" I didn't blink. "I'm doing this because you already had your Christmas without me. I'm simply giving you the gift of truth." Somebody's phone pinged. The live stream had reconnected through the battery backup and the comments were rolling in fast. "Wait, is that his mom? What did they do to deserve that?" I'm sobbing. "That woman is a queen." Vanessa lunged for the phone, but it slipped from her hands and clattered to the floor. The feed still running. "You planned this?" Adam demanded. His voice shook. "No," I said. "You planned it when you shut my door. When you sent me a voucher for a place where people wait to die. When you erased my name from your family because I made the air too heavy." He started to speak but I raised my hand. "I made the mortgage payments. I paid the taxes. I walked through this house when it was nothing but studs and wires. You made me a ghost here. Now I've come back to haunt you, not with anger but with paperwork." The projector clicked off. Darkness again, until the candles flickered back to life as the backup battery reconnected the foyer lights. Warm light filled the room again, but it felt different now. Honest. Cold yet clean. I turned toward the front door, and as I stepped into the crisp night air, I spoke without looking back. 14 days. Use them wisely. The door shut behind me with a sound that didn't echo. It ended. By Christmas morning, the internet had already taken over. I woke early out of habit, brewed a pot of coffee, and stood in a house stripped of party music and fake cheer. Just me, the hum of the refrigerator, and the faint buzz of something bigger. I opened my phone, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and the notifications exploded like fireworks. Who is she? That's his mom. I've never clapped harder. Silent revenge. Legal, elegant, brutal. She built the house, paid for it, raised the man in it, and they tried to evict her with a spa coupon. Clips of the moment had been edited and reshared everywhere. Titled Christmas Justice, Grandma's Silent Power Move, 14 Days of Regret, and the woman who took her house back. One version had already hit 3 million views by noon. Hashtags were multiplying. Hashtag Christmas eviction, hashtag Mama owns the deed, hashtag elder power. I'd never thought I'd be a hashtag. Never thought I'd see myself on a screen again, at least not like this. But there I was, calm as stone, delivering that line. 14 days. Use them wisely. Someone had even slowed it down and set it to orchestral music. It was beautiful in a strange way. The comments weren't cruel. Not to me. They were fierce, protective, outraged. My daughter made me sleep in the garage when her in-laws came. I left. Never looked back. Watching this with my mom, we're both crying. She's the definition of never mistake silence for weakness. Then I saw a name I knew. Emily Hastings, one of my former 5th graders, had posted on Facebook. She tagged me using my maiden name so people would recognize me. Mrs. Carson was my teacher when my parents were divorcing. I used to come to school hungry, she noticed. She'd bring me extra sandwiches, said they were leftovers, but I knew she made them for me. She kept me alive that year. She taught me grace when no one was looking. And now I find out someone made her live in a storage room and handed her a retirement home voucher? That's not justice. That's cruelty. Thousands liked her post, hundreds commented. Same here. She let me stay in the library during recess when I had no friends. She taught me how to write my first poem. This is the woman who gave us blankets during the blackout in 2009. I hadn't heard from Emily in years. Last I knew, she was a lawyer in D.C. I smiled, closed my phone for a moment, and just breathed. For decades I'd kept my head down, sacrificed without receipt, loved without expectation. I didn't carry bitterness, only weariness. The kind you get from being useful, until you're not. But now strangers knew my name, my story, and they understood the quiet violence of being forgotten. That afternoon a soft knock came at my door. I opened it slowly to find a woman in her 60s, wearing a red scarf and holding a foil-covered casserole dish. I'm Paula, she said gently. I live 4 houses down. I saw the clip. Just wanted to say I'm proud of you. And I brought something warm. I let her in. We sat on the couch, the same one Adam once tried to sell online because it didn't fit Vanessa's vibe. Paula spoke about her own mother, about the loneliness that creeps in when the decorations come down. It's like they think the only things we're good for are babysitting and dying quietly, she said, sipping her tea. Well, I replied, I skipped the babysitting. We laughed genuinely. My laughter didn't feel out of place for the first time in years. By evening the doorbell kept ringing. Women from the neighborhood. Old church friends. 2 retired teachers. A young nurse who'd recognized me from the video and brought gingerbread. By nightfall my house was filled with women. Women who'd been left behind. Women whose children no longer called. Women told, in ways loud or quiet, that they took up too much space. We sat around the table, pouring cider and toasting with cheap wine. One woman said, "You lit the match. We've all been too scared to strike." Another added, "You made the world see what quiet women carry." Before bed I checked my phone one last time. A local reporter had messaged asking for an interview. I ignored it, but I did read one more comment before turning in. She didn't scream. She didn't break things. She used the system. She used the truth. And she won. That's the kind of story I want my daughter to hear. I went to bed with a warm chest and a quiet mind. I hadn't planned for any of this to go viral. I hadn't planned to be anything but remembered. But somehow, in doing what was right for myself, I'd given voice to countless others who had never been heard. It began with a needle and a ball of yarn. Not a metaphor, real yarn, soft and worn, in that dusty lavender I've always loved. I sat on the front porch with it one afternoon, just after the eviction notice had been served, while the silence of an empty house settled over me. There was still tension in the walls, like the air hadn't forgiven the voices it once held. But I could breathe again, slowly, deeply. At first, I knitted just to give my hands something to do. That silence, even when you've earned it, can grow heavy. By the end of the week I had a full scarf, and then another. I gave one to Paula, my neighbor with the red scarf and the soft casseroles. She cried when I handed it to her. "This is the first gift I've received in years," she said. That night I thought, maybe I'm not the only one who needs something soft to hold. So I made a sign. Handwritten in blue ink, taped to the inside of the glass door where guests once came to sip Vanessa's curated wine. It read, "Come in if you've ever felt left behind. Come in if silence is the only thing that answers you lately. Come in if you want to write again, stitch again, speak again. Linda." The next day 2 women showed up. One carried a tote full of embroidery. The other brought a diary she hadn't opened since her husband passed. We made tea. We sat on the rug. We stitched in silence for a while, and then we talked. That was the birth of the quiet thread. I didn't plan to start a center. I just wanted to feel whole again. But broken things attract broken things, and before long the living room that had once hosted Facebook live streams now held women who hadn't spoken aloud in months. Widows, divorced women, mothers abandoned by their own children, caretakers too tired to ask for care themselves. We began meeting twice a week. Then 3 times. Then every day. Word spread. Churches posted our gatherings on their community boards. A retired nurse offered to teach grief mapping workshops on Thursdays. Another woman led letters never sent, helping others write to the people who had forgotten them. William even volunteered to give free estate consultations to women afraid of being erased from their own homes, just as I had been. I turned the old upstairs nursery into a library, filled with books donated by strangers who'd seen my story online. Cozy chairs. Soft blankets. A kettle that never went cold. We painted the walls a warm green. On the window shelf we placed framed photos of ourselves. Not just as mothers but as girls, brides, teachers, artists, women with full lives long before we were reduced to mom or grandma or her. We were finding ourselves again and we were stitching each other whole. One Tuesday morning I stood outside with a fresh sign. I pressed it onto the glass door, smoothing the tape at each corner. It read, "This house needed new energy. You were right. And now it has it. But it no longer has you." It wasn't to provoke Adam or Vanessa. Not even to hurt them. Just to confirm what had changed. They never came back. Adam sent one short email, asking if he could retrieve a box of old records from the garage. I let him. I had the box placed on the curb. He never rang the bell. Vanessa never said a word. I heard she deleted her social media for a while, maybe out of embarrassment, but I'd stopped watching by then. My focus was here with the women who came each morning with thermoses and trembling hands, thanking me like I'd given them a gift, when really they'd given me everything: purpose, peace, and the chance to stop being invisible. Clara, one of our regulars, stitched a piece I still keep above the mantel. It reads, "She did not scream. She did not shout. She rewrote the ending." One afternoon, sunlight spilled across the front room as a group of us sat piecing together a massive quilt. I looked around and realized the house had never felt more alive. Not because of lights or wine or forced smiles for a livestream audience, but because of the warmth that comes from honesty. The steady, quiet rhythm of women remembering who they are. We called it the quiet thread because that's what it felt like. Something soft and unassuming running through the years and the pain holding us together when nothing else could. We built a website. A local journalist wrote about us. Donations came in from all over the country. People who had seen that Christmas Eve clip and wanted to be part of something real. We used the money for supplies, roof repairs, ramps for women with walkers and canes. No one paid to come. The only rule was simple: show up as you are. And they did. Some came crying. Some came angry. Some so numb they could barely speak. But in time, every one of them found a little thread of joy, of memory, of self, and began to stitch again. As for me, I stopped sleeping in the back room. I moved into the master bedroom, the one that had always been mine and Robert's. I opened the curtains again. I filled the closet with soft clothes. And I took the lock off the door because I was no longer a shadow in my own home. I was the light. The email came on a Tuesday. Rain was tapping at the windows, soft and steady, like it used to on nights when I'd stay up knitting while Robert was away. Dusk had just started to settle when I opened my laptop, expecting nothing more than a few updates from the Quiet Thread website. There was a thank you note from a new woman in the journaling group. And then I saw it from Adam Carson, subject, Mom please. I stared at it for a long moment before clicking. No attachments. Just a single photo embedded in the body of the message. My grandson still in his red and green pajamas, clutching a small stuffed bear. His eyes were wide. He had Robert's nose. Beneath it was a message, each sentence too late and too empty. Mom, I know I've made mistakes. I was stupid. I let things get to me. Let Vanessa's opinions become mine. That's what Adam wrote. But I never stopped loving you. I just didn't know how to balance everything. The baby, work, the house. I got lost. But I see now you were right. You always were. I miss you. I miss the way you used to hum in the kitchen, the way you looked at me like I was the best thing that ever happened. I want to come home. We need you. He needs you. Please, Mom. Give me one more chance. Love, Adam. I read it twice. Then I leaned back, closed my eyes and listened to the rain. He remembered my humming. That surprised me. I used to hum old hymns while peeling potatoes, folding laundry, or walking from the porch to the mailbox. Nothing dramatic, just quiet reminders of peace in a life that rarely offered it. I hadn't hummed in years. I thought about rocking him when he was sick, pressing cool cloths to his forehead. About the nights he climbed into bed when Robert was working late, pressing his tiny fingers to my cheek just to make sure I was real. And I remembered the promise he made at 18. If I ever have a house, you'll be the first person who lives in it. He didn't keep it. Instead, he gave me a windowless room behind the kitchen and a coupon for a place where people go to wait for the end. I stood, walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hands didn't shake anymore. They were stronger now, calloused with purpose. I thought of all the times I'd excused him. He's tired. He's stressed. She's the one behind it, not him. But the truth was simpler. No one can treat you as less unless they already see you that way. Adam saw me as a burden and only remembered me when I took something away. I opened a blank email. I didn't reread his words. I didn't attach anything. I typed slowly. Adam, you weren't influenced, you were revealed. A good man doesn't need to be reminded to be good. A son who truly sees his mother doesn't wait until she changes the locks to see her worth. You turned off my light. You made me sit in the dark. You taught my grandson that elders are to be hidden, silenced, erased. Now you ask to return to that light, but that warmth no longer belongs to you. Learn to live in the dark as I once did. I hit send. No love, no sincerely, no door cracked open for negotiation. Just the truth. That night I didn't cry. I pulled a new ball of yarn from the basket and began another scarf. Each loop, each knot was steadier than the last. I thought of the women from our last circle. One who'd lost 2 sons, one to distance, one to death. Another who'd never had children and wondered if the loneliness was worse for her or for mothers who'd been forgotten. And yet none of them let grief swallow them whole. We sat together, creating warmth from silence, stitching our names into something lasting. The house no longer echoed with grief. It pulsed with memory and choice. Later that week, I printed Adam's email, folded it carefully, and placed it in the file in my closet labeled Letters from the Past I Survived. It sat beside the hospital bills from when Robert was sick, the letter from the school that laid me off after 22 years, and the original deed to this house. Evidence of love, endurance, and reclaiming the story. On Sunday, I shared the lesson, not the email, with the circle. A grandmother of 6 nodded, tears shining in her eyes. You taught him something, she said. Not the lesson he wanted, but the one he needed. Another woman added, you can't raise boys forever. At some point they decide if they'll be men or not. The group hummed in agreement. I hummed too softly. A familiar hymn, half melody, half memory. For the first time in years, it rose naturally from my throat. Felt like coming home to myself. The rocking chair creaked beneath me as I poured a second cup of tea. The porch was still, wrapped in late autumn's hush. Across from me sat Bernice, 76, quick-witted, sharp-tongued, barely 5 feet tall. She'd come to the Quiet Thread 3 weeks ago after her daughter-in-law told her to stop bringing trauma energy to Sunday dinner. We sat as we often did on Thursdays, knitting, sipping, watching leaves scatter across the lawn. Bernice glanced up from her stitching. "So tell me something," she said. "Do you ever feel bad about how it ended?" I looked out at the street and let the question breathe. "No," I said finally. "Because it never really ended. It just changed shape." She smirked. "That is such a you answer." I laughed softly. "I didn't do it to hurt them. I didn't need revenge. I needed air. I needed to feel like my life meant something after they made me feel like a burden. I didn't want them gone because I hated them. I wanted myself back because I loved me." Bernice nodded slowly. "You didn't retaliate," she said. "I returned the truth to where it belonged," I replied. She set her knitting in her lap. "That's heavy." "It's honest," I said. "For years I let silence be my diplomacy. I once believed that patience was the same as peace, but I've learned that patience without respect slowly wears you down until you disappear." I was disappearing. I reached for the quilt our group had pieced together, a tapestry of so many lives stitched into fabric. Every square had a name and a truth. "Edith, I gave them my body and they left me my bones." "Lupe, I didn't forget. I just waited." "Nora, 46 years of Sunday dinners and then they changed the locks." "And mine, when I stood up they finally looked down." We weren't sewing for vengeance. We were sewing to remember. Bernice broke the quiet. "When my son stopped calling I told myself he was just busy. But busy people make time for what matters. I wasn't busy. I was invisible." I placed my hand over hers. "And now?" She smiled slowly and I saw it in her eyes, that fierce, unshakable knowing of a woman who has been discarded, only to realize her worth was never theirs to give. That evening, after the porch emptied and the women carried home their journals, scarves, or simply a little more light in their eyes, I went upstairs to the old study. I sat in the chair where Robert used to read and opened my letters never sent notebook. I wrote, "We don't need apologies to prove our worth. We don't need someone to say, 'I was wrong,' to know we were right. Time doesn't always heal, but truth will free you. And sometimes, silence is the longest, loudest judgment you can give." I closed the book. The house creaked almost as if it approved. Before bed I stood in the hallway and read the sign on the door one more time. This house needed new energy. "You were right. Now it has it. But it no longer has you." The words didn't hurt. They stood like a plaque, quiet, factual, unshakable. Years ago I would have sat by the phone second-guessing myself. Now I slept knowing that their view of me no longer defined me. Being left behind wasn't the end of my story. It was simply the start of theirs. And in their story, perhaps one day they'll see the woman they buried in silence. Not to beg her forgiveness but to finally recognize her. Or maybe they won't. It doesn't matter. As I remember. I remember the young bride who married a good man with little money. I remember the mother who raised her son alone and skipped meals so he wouldn't have to. I remember the woman who stayed quiet for years and the woman who finally said no more. The woman who bought this house. The woman who reclaimed it. The woman who turned its rooms into a refuge for the forgotten. For more true tales of women, subscribe to The Voice Inside. Sometimes revenge is just a rocking chair, and the deed in your name.